welcome to the Tristan channel. My name's Tristan, and as you may or may not know, I did some sci-fi lore on the xenomorphs and the predators. Well, I felt I needed to do a video on Star Trek lore, being that I am a Trekkie at heart. And so I start this series with one of my favourite races, the Romulans. The Romulans were a humanoid race from the planet Romulus. The Romulans were biological cousins of Vulcans, descended from those who rejected Surak's reforms during the Time of Awakening. By the 24th century, the Romulan Star Empire was one of the major powers in the galaxy after a supernova destroyed the Romulan sun. The Romulan Free State became the official government. Eventually, the Romulans reunified with the Vulcans and settled on the planet Vulcan, which was renamed Nivar. The great and sadly late Ambassador Spock once theorized that the Vulcans might be descendants of the Eritans. Fucking butcher that. In 2369, evidence was discovered by the Enterprise D that several species, including the Romulans, and therefore also the Vulcans, trace back to DNA seeded on many planets by ancient humanoids, billions of years ago. T'Pol stated that Vulcans evolved on Vulcan in the Forge. However, this was roughly a century before Return to Tomorrow took place, and T'Pol probably just cited the scientific theory of her time. If Sargon's people resulted from a DNA seeded by ancient humanoids themselves, both events from Return to Tomorrow and The Chase are in fact compatible. By the late 24th century, some Romulans believed that the story of Gan Madan predicted the arrival of the ancestors of the Romulans and Vulcans on Vulcan. When Surak's reforms of embracing logical principles and rejecting emotion spread rapidly across Vulcan in the 4th century, a minority rejected Surak's ideals. They were described as those who march between the raptor's wings, a symbol later to be used in the Romulan Star Empire, and eventually departed Vulcan after losing a nuclear war called the Time of Awakening. At some point they settled on twin planets that became known as Romulus and Remus, thereby laying the foundation of the Romulan Star Empire. Romulans were aware of humanity for some time, before Earth knew of them. Infiltrating the highest levels of the Vulcan High Command, the Romulans were impressed and seemingly confused by humans. The Enterprise NX-1, under the command of the then Captain Archer, inadvertently encountered a Romulan minefield at one point, officially the first time humanity became aware of the Romulans. Even after fighting the Earth-Romulan War, it wasn't until the 23rd century that the humans eventually made visual contact with Romulans during an encounter with Kirk and the Enterprise NCC-1701. After the Treaty of Alderaan went into effect, the Romulans retreated into political and social isolation from the Federation. In the late 2364, an unprovoked attack on a Romulan outpost near the Federation neutral zone occurred. The Romulans initially suspected the Federation had executed the attack, but it was later learned that the Borg may have been responsible. This event marked the end of Romulan political isolationism with the Federation. In keeping with their xenophobic attitudes, the Romulans tend to conquer species rather than form alliances with them, and individual Romulans tend to treat other species with varying degrees of disdain. That did not prevent them from employing diplomacy when it suited their purposes. Soon after their emergence from a century of isolation in the mid-2260s, they had established at least 2 embassies with the Federation. One such embassy was a freeway endeavour on the planet Nimbus 3 along with the Klingon Empire, and the other was on Earth itself. Klingons and Romulans once shared an alliance for a number of years. Beginning in the 2260s, over the years a number of incidents, including the Khitomer massacre, led the Klingons to develop a deep-seated hatred for the Romulans, and the Romulans were arguably the species that Klingon society in general despises most of all. A Cardassian embassy existed on Romulus for a time, and Elam Garak was employed there as a gardener, suggesting that 2 species maintained an active diplomatic relationship. In 2371, Romulan and Cardassian agents in the Tal Shiar Obsidian Order cooperated in an attempt to attack on the Dominion homeworld. The Romulans had cut ties with the Cardassians by the time they entered into the Dominion War, but precisely when their relationship ended prior to this was unclear. One common saying among the Romulans was "never turn your back on a Breen." While this statement could be taken as partially humorous and not in itself indicative of hostilities between the 2 species, the Breen thought's apparent condition that the Breen being given Romulus in exchange for their help in the Dominion War suggested there was some degree of unfriendly history between the 2. The species that Romulans seemed to dislike most, however, were Vulcans, and this feud goes back many centuries. The 2 powers once fought in a war that lasted 100 years, which was ignited due to a misunderstanding created by one of Q's self-destructive stunts. The 2 species remained distrustful of one another for an incredibly long time, but some Romulans grew tired of this, and a grassroots movement for reunification of the 2 species was active for a time on Romulus. It was generally assumed that after the split, Romulus and Vulcans were unaware of their common ancestry until the 23rd century. The exact date or even time frame of the Vulcan-Romulan split is unclear, though it certainly happened sometime after Surak's teachings were introduced, which on the Earth calendar would be the 4th century AD or so. In 2387, the Romulan sun went supernova. Ambassador Spock attempted to prevent the supernova from striking the planet using red matter, but he was unsuccessful, and Romulus was destroyed. A mining vessel named the Arada survived and was captained by Nero, who exploited the black hole's creation of a time warp into the past to attack Spock's home planet of Vulcan in revenge, and planned to destroy all planets of the Federation so that Romulus could be free and possibly conquer everywhere else. The first part of Nero's plan was mostly successful, as Vulcan and most of the Vulcan species was destroyed. However, the Narada and its crew were destroyed in the Battle of Earth by the crew of the Enterprise, led by the James T. Kirk of the Kelvin timeline. Just prior to the destruction of Romulus, the Romulans reached out to the Federation, which accepted their request for help. Admiral Jean-Luc Picard would lead a fleet of rescue ships to Romulus in an attempt to evacuate as many Romulans as possible, but the rescue ships were attacked and destroyed by what appeared to be at the time a group of malfunctioning rogue synthetic lifeforms during their attack on Mars. This action led to Starfleet withdraw the rescue mission, thus betraying the Romulans in their hour of need. Not wanting to be a spectator in what he viewed as a dereliction of duty and criminal action by Starfleet, Picard gave Starfleet a choice of either accepting his revised plan for the mission or his resignation. In which case Starfleet Command chose the latter, and so in disgust he retreated to his vineyard on Earth. After the destruction of Romulus, some of the surviving Romulans were politically organised as the Romulan Free State. Centuries after Spock's death, the Romulans reunified with the Vulcans and returned to their former home of Vulcan, which was renamed Ni'Var. In the early days of the Quat Milat were crucial in establishing trust between the two peoples, though their reconciliation remained difficult. After the Big Burn in the 31st century, the Romulans advocated for remaining in the Federation, though they were overruled. And there you have it, folks. The complete history of the Romulans. If you like this video, hit the like. And if you haven't, then please show support by subscribing to the channel. And until the next video, take care and be well.